Hello, I am Rebecca Reinking, speech pathologist, and I want to show you how you can get more out of the cues that you're already using. Now, if you have these little animal cues, yes, you can use them to help cue speech sounds. A lot of them are alliterative so that they really make sense to the child. So, for example, we've got the quiet coughing cat for the k sound, or we might have something like the tiptoeing tiger for t. So already, if you're using these and you're using those metaphors, you've probably seen how your kids gravitate towards these cues because they're large. If you place them on a craft stick and stick it with sticky tape, you can hold them up. And as we know, a lot of younger kids, they really like and they relate to animals. So that's why we've got this animal themed deck here. But apart from using them just as cues, just for speech sounds, I'm going to show you 3 other ideas that you can use these speech cues for. So the first thing you can do is you can use them for minimal pairs. So let's say, for example, if your child is fronting, you could use these cues. So you've got your your tiptoeing tiger or your coughing cat or the quiet cat sound, the k sound. You can use these and children can categorize the minimal pair cards. So if you've got car and tar and cool and tool and cap and tap, you could be saying those words and you could be asking the child to identify what the first sound is, what the starting sound is, just so that they can hear the difference between the sounds and they can learn when to use, the tiger sound or when to use the quiet cat sound. So that is something I do all the time. I use these for minimal pair cues. The second thing that you can do is use them for the complexity approach. Not just the complexity approach, but anytime you're targeting complex clusters or just 2 or 3 element clusters. Complexity approach is something I use a lot of. Now here's what I've noticed with a lot of my kids. Let's say we're doing an S cluster. They might drop that first sound. So a word like star might be tar, or they might drop that second sound. So a word like stick might be sick. So if my kids are quite familiar with these cues already because I've used them to cue sounds, I might explain to them that these 2 animals, they've got to stick together. Or, these animals make sounds next to each other. So we've got to make sure that we don't lose one of those animal sounds. So often I will use these and cue them to help the child. Now, sometimes I've noticed that my students have difficulties hearing the difference and they can't hear that second sound in the cluster. So if everything's been reduced and they're not sure, I might then have all the different cluster combinations up and we'll practice hearing the difference. So if I say a word like sky or stop, which sound did you hear? Did you hear that tiger or did you hear that quiet cat sound? Which one? And it just provides that child with that extra cue for what they should be listening out for. So that's another great way to use these. And you can even do them with 3 element clusters. So I'm going to grab one here. Let's say if you're doing SKW, like square, squash, you can have your snake, your cat and your whale. So you can have all those 3 cues there so that the child can see all the sounds that they need to say in that complex cluster word. The last thing that you can do with these, and something I've done usually at the beginning of therapy, is really work on phonological awareness skills and identifying sounds. So I just gave you an example how we might identify the sounds within clusters, but sometimes I've had kids and it's just they need that foundation so that we can talk about sounds, especially if they've had a history of hearing difficulties, middle ear infections, or they're just a bit new to speech as well. We might teach my students a lot of these little sounds so that they know what they are. So for example, I might pick 5 little animal cues or 4 cues, and I might say a word like sit. And I'll ask the child to tell me which animal sound they heard. Did they hear, that tiger sound, or was it the snake sound? So it is a really, really great way when you have these animals. And as I mentioned, because many of them are alliterative as well, which helps, cue that child to listen to those sounds. If you think about it, the tiptoeing tiger sound. T. There's lots of t in there. So it can just really help guide kids and help them zone in their listening for a lot of those phonological awareness activities, so that when we get to our speech sound goals, I know that their listening and their ability to identify and discriminate sounds and just know what the sound is stronger, so that we have a better chance in therapy given my target intervention approach. The last thing I'll let you know, the fifth thing that you can do is, let's say if the child is making a substitution. We talked about it a little bit with minimal pairs, but even if it's just something like an S sound might sound like shh, you know, and it's just their tongue's not in the right spot, I might hold up the animal cue that they're saying and say, oh, I think I heard that sheep sound. Do you think you can do some smiley lips and do that, you know, that hissing sound? So I might use these as a way to let the child know that I know that they're trying to say the snake sound, but it actually sounds like the sheep sound. And that can really help the child too, just to be able to categorize their sound and to really, I think I mentioned before, like zone in, like tune in to what they're saying and how they're saying it, so that it makes more sense. Make sure you drop any other ideas that you have on how to use these, because I always love learning from SLPs like you, and hit the like and subscribe button so that you get more of our videos in your inbox when they come out.